Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a delightfully whimsical but honestly profoundly educational tale. We're going to follow a very hungry reptile as he navigates a forest absolutely packed with some, let's just say, bizarre foods. But beneath all the charm here, there's actually a surprisingly brilliant exploration of nutrition, biology, and the real-world consequences of our dietary choices. We're going to break down exactly how this story teaches us about growth and moderation, and we've got some fantastic visual breakdowns to really map out the science of this silly crocodile's journey. Let's get into it. To kick things off, let's just ask the big, central question framing our whole analysis today. What actually happens when a silly reptile tries to eat the entire forest? Look, we all know food fuels our bodies, right? But this source material takes that concept and pushes it to its absolute, literal limit. It zeroes in on the direct cause and effect of our dietary choices, and exactly what happens when sheer appetite completely overrides logic. That brings us to Section 1, Breakfast in the Woods. Okay, let's set the scene and see exactly where our story kicks off on this beautiful morning. So our protagonist, the silly little crocodile, wakes up in a place called Abaka and heads straight out into the wonderfully named woods of Abuad. He's totally well-rested after a great night's sleep, and he's got one single, simple goal for his day. He wants breakfast. It's the most primal motivation ever, and it perfectly sets the stage for everything that's about to go down. Moving on to Section 2, Healthy versus Unhealthy Choices. Now, what's so fascinating about this specific environment is the absolute sheer variety of delightfully absurd food options staring him in the face. This brilliantly illustrates our crocodile's major dietary dilemma. He's looking at a literal menu of choices, and it perfectly contrasts incredibly weird but nutritious woodland foods against your standard everyday junk food. Over on the healthy side, we've got bizarre stuff like spicy banana mushrooms, salty pink apples, stinky polka dot peaches, funny honey, and a totally mysterious item known only as something stuffed in muffin. And then opposing that, we have the unhealthy stuff, chocolate bars, potato chips, and fuzzy suckers. It's honestly a perfect microcosm of the choices you and I face every single day, right? The complex, maybe acquired tastes of nutrient-dense foods versus the easy, hyper-palatable appeal of junk food. Faced with this massive buffet, the crocodile's first impulse is just to eat absolutely everything in sight. But the narrator jumps in with a very clear warning. Hang on, silly crocodile, before you start eating everything, you might want to think about what you're eating. This sets up this great conflict between his immense, roaring hunger and the need for mindful consumption. It's basically a call for intention over impulse. But, spoiler alert, our crocodile pretty much ignores this and decides to just start eating anyway, which launches us right into our biological experiment. Which brings us to Section 3, the mechanics of growing. Let's see how his specific sequence of snacking builds a really fascinating biological experiment. We can actually trace the exact cause and effect for every single bite he takes. So step 1, he starts with the healthy, salty pink apple. And boom, the result is immediate physical growth. Step 2, he tries the chocolate bar. Now it tastes incredibly sweet, but importantly, it yields absolutely zero growth, just empty energy. Step 3 introduces a fun biological reaction. The spicy banana mushroom is super healthy, but it's so spicy it gives him a runny nose. But that leads directly to Step 4. He eats the funny honey, which is specifically designed to cure a runny nose, perfectly restores his balance, and triggers another growth spurt. Finally, Step 5, he downs the stinky polka dot peach, proving that something with a seriously off-putting smell can still be incredibly delicious and nutritious. Let's synthesize that data. When we break down the food items, their taste profiles, and the physical results, a really crucial point emerges. The big takeaway here is that while unhealthy foods might taste sweet and appealing in the moment, they do literally nothing for the crocodile's actual development. But on the flip side, the nutrient-dense foods, even the ones that are excessively salty or intensely spicy or incredibly stinky, those are the exact inputs that actually contribute to his physical growth. It's such a wonderful visualization of function over flavor. All right, Section 4, the dangers of excess. Because as is human, or I guess in this case, reptilian nature, our hungry protagonist gets a great idea to optimize this whole process. And that takes us to the climax of excess. He thinks, what if I just eat everything to get bigger, faster? He totally ignores the narrator's earlier warning. He realizes, hey, healthy food makes me grow. So he logically, but dangerously, concludes that eating the entire forest buffet all at once will make him massive instantly. Basically, he wants to biohack his way to being huge. But the immediate consequence is severe. He successfully transforms into a giant, big, silly crocodile. He got exactly what he wanted. But he doesn't look so good. His body physically hurts, and he admits that he feels terribly sick. He forced the system to process way too much, way too quickly. The narrator jumps back in with this observation. Eating healthy food is a good thing to do, but eating too much food can be unhealthy too. That quote right there encapsulates the core tension of the entire story. It's such a vital lesson. We so often think of healthy as this simple binary, like if a little is good, a lot must be amazing, right? But overindulgence, even in nutritious, beneficial things, fundamentally backfires. The dose makes the poison, and our guy pushed his body far beyond its natural capacity. And that brings us to Section 5, a lesson in moderation. This is the resolution of our explainer, where the extreme physical toll forces a very natural, if a bit messy, corrective action. In a wonderfully polite twist of phrasing from the source materials, Step 1 shows the sick crocodile excusing himself, claiming he has to go to a party. What actually happens in Step 2 is that he ends up feeding all of the plants in the woods, which, is a very gentle way of saying his body aggressively rejects the massive overload of food. But once he purges this excess, Step 3 shows him returning right back down to his normal, comfortable little reptile size, and it instantly relieves his sickness. Basically, his body forced a hard reset. So let's summarize the key takeaways of the story. We learn that healthy food is the true fuel for physical growth, while junk food merely provides empty sweetness without any real structural benefit. But most importantly, we see that overindulgence always leads to sickness. We absolutely have to respect that bodies, and by extension, honestly, any natural processes or big projects we undertake, take a long time to grow naturally. Trying to force that process through sheer excess or rushing it is just a guaranteed recipe for pain. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. The silly crocodile finally learned to take his time, to just enjoy being the little reptile he was, and to savor every bite along the way. So take a look at your own habits. Are there areas in your own life, whether it's your diet, your career, your personal goals, where you're trying to grow too fast and maybe making yourself sick in the process? It's a great question about patience and moderation to chew on for yourself. Thanks so much for joining me to break down this fascinating tale, and I'll catch you in the next one.